What is up, everyone? Welcome to another wonderful edition of Every Day is Draft Day. I am your host, Dan Turner. Joining me, as always, although no longer live, Steffi Smalls. What's up, Steph?
I miss you, Dan. What the hell?
I
I
know,
feel like
I
I'm
know.
having separation anxiety, but it's nice to
It's,
see your beautiful face again.
oh, thank you.
Although it's not in person, it is nice to see you.
It's nice to see you too. It seems like it's been forever since I've seen you, but good to know everyone got home okay and everyone's good. So we're here today to recap the Senior Bowl, the event that we were at last week in Mobile. So just to kick things off, who were some players that impressed you the most last week?
I think one of the guys you and I couldn't keep our eyes off of was Damien Pierce. Like, can we have a moment for him? Because I think it's like he was so underutilized. I think um given his talent and the like what he has to offer in college, that I think that's maybe why I was so not that I didn't, have him on my list to keep my eye on, but I was so impressed. I think the two of us, like even that day two, we kept looking at each other like every time he did something, we would like look at each other and talk about it because he
Uh-huh.
was so good. I mean, he is everything that you want. He checks every single box that you want in a running back off. That's it. Like he's so dynamic. He has very strong hands, and they were using him
Mhm.
a lot in the like receiving game during practice. I am very excited to see what happens to him going into the league. I think he made a name for himself. He's the perfect example of those guys that just didn't get used enough, but has the talent. Kind of like reminds me a little bit. I was trying to think of what kind of comp I could come up with. Reminds me a little bit of like a Rashad Penny.
Mhm.
Um, as far as that's just the first name I could think of for a comp.
Yeah, great pick. Every time running back had a good rush in practice, it ended up being excuse me, it ended up being our guy. So the thing that I loved about him the most was he in one-on-one drills when he was asked to pass pro for his QB, he actually passed pro better than some of the offensive linemen uh,
Yeah,
down in Mobile. So, like you said, he's the complete package there, and I love to see what he can do at the next level. But I think can definitely think his Senior Bowl performance has pushed him up some draft boards, if not all of them, because any team that is looking for a running back, he's going to be good value in the middle portion of some drafts.
absolutely. I agree too. He was like very effective as far as pass protection came, and I feel like that's such a great skill to have, especially as a running back. And I don't know that we saw that much out of a lot of the running backs down there, but
Hmm.
he absolutely stood out. Like you couldn't he's one of those guys. Like when you watch these practices, when the guy you just like keep looking at him. You're trying to focus on someone else, and then you can't because it's like, oh, David Pierce is doing something else I want to look at.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's how you. Honestly, that's how as we both know, that's how you get in the field in the NFL is receiving work in the modern NFL and pass protection. So if he can do that consistently at the next level, he's gonna, he's gonna see the field and get those opportunities.
Absolutely. I don't disagree with you.
All right, so my first guy that I was really impressed by was a defensive end, Boye Maffey from Minnesota. I think there was was never a question about his athleticism and speed going into mobile, but some question like how his power and how he's going to hold up against some of the offensive line talent, and he was just blowing people away. I mean, he was running by people like they weren't even there, like they were like standing still, like they were traffic cones. He had a really good game in the Senior Bowl game himself. He was disruptive. He had a sack or two. So it'd be really interesting to see uh, how he does at the next level against better competition because as we both have learned, the offensive line uh, competition in Mobile wasn't as good as we had hoped. But he had a strip sack in the game. He was really good in one-on-one drills. He was consistently pushing his guy back into the quarterback. So I'm interested to see with some good coaching if he can develop like a couple more pass rushing moves and be a good standout defensive end in the league.
Yeah, I think a lot of the defensive players really, that was another one. Like, we couldn't get over, again, that was one of the things we kept looking at each other. Like, I couldn't get over how good the defensive players were. Like, they were absolutely shining. They were embarrassing the crap out of the O line. I mean, there were definitely, and, we'll get to it, but the line was definitely, the O line was definitely part of the guys I was super disappointed in because coming in, I was so excited, but they clowned them so many times. I mean, they looked silly.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there anyone else that you were really impressed by?
I mean, I feel like it would be very against like my brand and how much screaming I did about this player to not bring up. And I'll see if you could.
Wait,
Who am I going to bring
it's
up?
Hayward, right? It's
Who?
Hayward. Hayward.
No, I can't. Tight end.
Oh, Dolchich.
Yes! Oh my gosh. I love this kid. I was so impressed every single rep. And it was funny because I got to talk to him in the morning and then watching him even at practice. Like somehow he flew a little bit under my radar and maybe he shouldn't have, but he is like embodies exactly what you want as a tight end entirely. And he was another one. You get kind of drawn to him and he was clearing paths on his own for the rushing game independently. Like it's not like he wasn't just being like his standard blocking tight end. Like he was capable of like absolutely clearing paths independently. And that's outside of everything else that he was able to do. Strong hands. I don't know that I even saw a drop out of him while we were down there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very impressed with him. I think this was overall a very strong tight end class from at least the guys that were down there.
Yeah, absolutely. As compared to like what people expected when everyone first got down there versus how they actually performed, I completely agree that that tight end was definitely a position that showed that they had a lot more promise than we all thought, and that was a great
Right.
pick. Great pick for a good overall tight end showing down there as well.
Right.
So the one guy, another guy that I really liked, that we didn't really talk about much in practice. He was kind of quiet in practice, but really stood out a lot during the game. Was Romeo Dobbs, the wide receiver out of Nevada. He had some
Yes.
great catches and great route running during the game. He had that one ridiculous catch in between three defenders from Desmond Ritter in the game. So if he can translate that kind of route running and that kind of hands into the league, I mean, he's not the fastest guy, but he's a really good technician when it comes to the receiver position. And there's always going to be a spot for guys like that in the league. I'm not saying he's going to be, wide receiver one or two, but he's definitely going to find a way onto a roster. Definitely be able to contribute somewhere. So that I was surprised. I didn't see as much out of him during practices, but he really surprised me with how well he did during the game.
Yeah. Don't you feel like this is the like it seems like this draft class like wasn't getting enough and not that they weren't getting enough attention because I understand maybe why, but it seems like this might end up being one of those classes where we get a bunch of gems out of because of how little attention they're getting. I feel like everyone's being very negative about this class and I get it, but there was a lot of things to like and I think there's a lot of very sneaky guys to keep your eyes out for.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the reasons, there's a couple of reasons why I think, in my opinion, it's not people are pretty negative. One, there isn't a great quarterback prospect. Um, in terms of fantasy, there isn't like a blue chip, running back or wide receiver to everyone that hangs their hat on, like like a McCaffrey or Barkley or someone like that. So it's a really big defensive line defensive draft with some good tight ends, and those honestly people don't get as excited about those kind of players as they do the quarterbacks, receivers, and running backs. And not saying they can't be good. They can all be really. I think there's a lot of going to be really a lot of solid players that come out of this draft. There just isn't that blue chip prospect that everyone can fawn over right now. So I think that's what is contributing to not a lot of excitement overall in this draft class. And to be fair, the quarterbacks didn't do that well.
Right.
They did okay. So that clearly dampened even more excitement than people already had anyway.
Absolutely. And I feel like there was a lot of, there was names from schools maybe you don't see as often coming through. And I think that kind of, there's like a negative connotation coming from these schools because you're like, you want them to come out of a massive school, but maybe you're going to see like a Christian Watson that did fantastic this week and looked really, really great. I think he might have been the most consistent receiver there. Someone that definitely is on my radar, someone I'm going to keep my eyes on. And maybe not the flashiest school he's coming out of, but the talent is there in comparison to some of the other schools.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot more, like you said, smaller school prospects that were doing well. There wasn't a lot of like big name, big school talent. But like small school players can contribute just as much as big name players. There just isn't as much hype. But doesn't mean like this is the kind of draft I think we're going to get a lot of solid contributors all throughout the draft. I mean, there may not be a Hall of Fame level talent that people are proclaiming before the draft, but I think there are going to be a bunch of players from here that come out and have really good, solid careers overall.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's so, I mean, and there's even names that like we didn't like talk about like Rashad White. There were guys to look at here that were very exciting people to get excited about. Trey McBride,
Hmm.
Isaiah Likely. He was a little bit more quiet, but definitely when he did show his talent, you were very excited about him. But
Yeah.
you know, even Austin, Calvin Austin, you and I, again, another guy kept your
Mhm.
eyes are just drawn to certain players,
Right.
and even you're trying to watch the ones that you want to watch, and you're like, God damn it, but you look so good, so I need to pay attention to you.
Hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It's scary, and we already said this to Jason how much we agreed on a lot of stuff in the Senior Bowl, so everyone's worried now.
That was so annoying. I'm like, oh my God, why do we keep freaking agreeing? I don't want to agree
Why do
with
you
you
have
this
such good
much.
points? Stop making good points. I hate you. Is that
Yeah, we're not supposed to agree this much. It's annoying.
what?
And also, Connor Hayward is going to change the fullback position, just so everyone knows. I'm going to make
I
that very clear. He
he
was the
has
most versatile player that was down there. I don't
he
even
was
understand.
he was a
He's,
good player.
I love him.
You know who he reminds me of kind of, and this is going back a bit. He reminds me kind of like Leonard Weaver, where he's a good fullback, but he's like athletic enough where he can also like carry the ball and he has like some catching ability. So
Yeah. Well, he's
he's a,
played I was telling you when I
yeah.
got to talk to him, like, he's played every position, and this is like not stuff that you could, like, he's played safety, he's played wide receiver, he's played tight end, like, you name it, he's done that. And
Mhm.
he's also just like a lot of these guys, it just seems like, and that's probably part two, like us being down there, is like you get to talk to them and see the quality of, even like their character a little bit too, and their ability to talk and how they respond to questions. And I think there is a little bit something to that. Am I going to place them higher on like a draft board because of it? No.
Mhm.
But was I impressed with that? And will it maybe lead me towards taking them over someone else? Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Yes, and that's a key point. You can like a guy without moving him around your draft board. You can
Right.
just like him. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on the flip side of liking players, there is some players that we're disappointed by. I'm going to go first on this one. The player that I was most disappointed by, especially in the game itself, was Carson Strong, the quarterback out of Nevada. I think that out of all the quarterbacks, all six of them, he showed he had the worst game. He had that really bad interception that he kind of floated over his receiver. He was pretty inaccurate, only going 6 of 11. He didn't look comfortable in the pocket. He was supposed to have a big arm, but we didn't really see him throw, downfield that much. So the primary reason why everyone loved him, he didn't really showcase. I think that was the perfect spot for him because the quarterback competition was pretty wide open the entire time. So with quarterback being so close, with people just trying to find a reason to pick someone over another, Strong really didn't separate himself in any significant way from anyone, and I think actually kind of damaged his chances a little bit at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, it is interesting because like even, my time got cut short down there, and the time I did get to see, it was like everyone on Twitter is talking, we're paying compliments to this person, that person, another. I felt like Strong's arm during practice was very comparable to a lot of the guys that were getting gassed up. And he kind of obviously didn't fell short of that. So um again, we agreed on this. It's not a super, the quarterbacks were underwhelming, and I'm not going to act like they weren't. There's things to like, right? Malik Willis, I am not saying there isn't something to like. Like, there is
Mhm.
something to his mobility, his arm, and I get it. But again, it just does not feel like a super consistent quarterback class.
Right. And the thing is, like a lot of his traits, he is shared by a couple more quarterbacks in his class. Like he has a big arm, but Howell has a big arm. Willis has a big arm. He has mobility. All of them pretty much have mobility there. So it's not like he has anything that's really like unique about him. Like he said he had the strongest arm in the class in this class, but he never showed it. So like, does he really? Like, why didn't he show it in the game or even in practices more?
Yeah. And we're
So
not even talking about at the next level, right? So you take
right.
these guys, you put them into the next level, and that was part of it, right? And I felt like during practice, uh, like there's not even defender, there's no pressure, there's nothing, but even like during the game, right? Like
Mhm.
it's not the same as being at the next level, being at that NFL level and having the type of pressure that an NFL quarterback is going to have. So It'll be interesting to see where these guys go. And I think, that's one of the things I'm looking forward to the most. I'm not, even my own team, there's a lot of chatter, see what happens, but he's definitely not one that I don't feel comfortable with any of these guys. I know one will end up a stud. Maybe we'll get two studs out of this class, but it's hard to tell who could definitely be that guy.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, that's a problem. Like usually there's a quarterback that checks all the boxes, and none of these quarterbacks do. There's a huge red flag, at least one with every single one of them. So I know one of them will be in a good situation and will develop into a quality starter, if not like a great player. It's just hard to pinpoint who that will be until we find out where they go. Uh, so for you, who disappointed you?
I so it's funny because once I moved to Michigan, now I'm paying attention to more Michigan game. I get stuck watching Central Michigan. That O lineman Raymond, I was so excited. I thought he was going to be this sleeper lineman, right? And
Hmm.
like he just disappointed the crap out of me. He let defenders get into his chest. His technique was so sloppy. I mean, you saw it out of a lot of these guys. It was hard to even figure out who you could see moving on to the next level without needing a lot of work. I think that like someone like Zion Johnson, I think he separated himself very well. But Raymond, he was someone that I really was looking forward to, and he definitely disappointed me.
Yeah, I agree there. I think a lot of the offensive linemen didn't do that well, and actually that segues right into my next guy as well. Marcus Hayes out of the tackle out of Oklahoma. He was supposed to be a good prospect coming in. He was kind of flying a little bit under the radar, but he definitely had an opportunity to solidify himself, and he did the exact opposite. I mean, he was getting bull rushed by 235-pound Kyron Johnson, who's a who's a linebacker out of Kansas, and I mean, you can't show something like that on tape and expect to be, taken seriously as a starting potential player at the next level. I mean, these guys were running. These defensive linemen weren't even running, any fancy, any move like any rip or bull rush moves at all. They were just literally pushing them right back into the goalposts on most plays. They weren't trying anything fancy or just running around them. So I mean, he can probably, with some coaching, and I realize these are guys aren't in the NFL yet, but to see that kind of performance versus basically, they're still college guys. I mean, what's going to happen when it's up against like an Aaron Donald or a Sam Hubbard or some like elite defensive players? It concerns me how badly and how consistently they were beaten on the field, both in practice and in the game.
Yeah, I don't even disagree with you. And it's crazy because I feel like even like cause moving on, not trying to like interrupt your point too. I'm trying to think like it felt like there was like groups of players that felt like they very much did not impress me as much as I was really hoping for. Like,
Mhm.
and I just go back to like the O lineman. Like I can't get over how disappointed I felt. And I don't know if that's because the defensive class just is so impressive this year,
Mhm.
or if it was, it's hard with the Senior Bowl too. You don't know like how much can we really focus on and use that as an
Right.
analysis moving forward.
Hmm. Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Like obviously, like they're not practicing like consistent like scheme or something. The thing that bothers me the most is that they were getting beaten by the most basic of moves. It wasn't like they were doing like stunts or anything like that. They were literally just beating them like one on one, and obviously they can coach it up if they get in a scheme, and offensive linemen aren't going to be one on one a lot of times in their scheme within their teams. That's what worried me the most. Like I can understand if like they had some complicated defensive scheme or something, but they were literally just getting beaten by nothing moves from undersized like 235-pound guys, and that's something
Right.
that can happen.
And it made it almost I felt like it was almost like a lot of sloppy technique too. Like him, Pat, everything it was, like there was something you could complain about with a lot of these guys. Like even like Braxton Jones, like he looked really good, but his hands were wide out a lot. Like there was everything, every little thing you could kind of find something to uh critique their technique on almost. And outside of that, then it's like they're just getting pushed back. You can't even
Hmm.
there's nothing even to watch except for the fact that you're like, holy crap, this kid's getting owned right now.
Yeah, they're literally just you're a blocking sled at that point, just
I
getting.
will say a lot of them did do a lot better probably on 7-on-7. Like
Hmm.
it almost felt a little bit worse when it wasn't in that scenario, but
Right.
outside of that still.
Yeah, and obviously it's going to look worse on one-on-ones because you're the only one out there, and everyone's focuses on you.
Yeah.
But even in 7-on-7s, and even in the game in the early part, like there was no rushing lanes at all. Like the defensive line completely dominated them in the rushing game. Like there were no holes. So that, I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, like some of these guys are gonna develop and turn to quality linemen. It wasn't a good start for them going into the draft if this is how they performed.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. So before we wrap up this edition of Every Day is Draft Day, is there any other final thoughts you have on the Senior Bowl?
Who else? Who am I missing? Who did I also like? You and I had our eyes on Trey Turner. Didn't get a lot of high remarks from a lot of Twitter and the guys that were down there, but he was someone that definitely was interesting, an intriguing guy to keep your eyes on.
Mhm.
He, especially in the rain too. Like we did get a very rainy day. I mean, it was pouring. Dan and I had to change our clothes. Like it was not. It was a not good weather. And you look at someone like Jones Jr. and while he looked quick and his deep balls looked good and he got pretty good separation, he was dropping a lot of balls. And then it was like, what is going on? So there was a few other guys like you and I kept saying like it's so hard. Like once you look at that
Mhm.
guy, you're like, crap, I can't not look away.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. I think there were a couple of players that did really well. Trey Turner's like hands were really good. He caught everything. But I think overall, I think the experience was awesome. It was awesome to go down there and like talk to a couple of NFL people, and the fact that you were there was also awesome. So we did it together. That was great. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really fun. It's really cool, and it'll be nice, especially like as we approach the draft, being able to look at more film, being able to see, other people's opinions. Like I think that's the biggest part too with the draft, with fantasy information that you absorb. Like definitely take it from every spectrum. It's really easy to fall into the echo chamber, but there's definitely some guys to keep your eyes out on.
Yeah, exactly. So with that, thank you all for watching. Every day is draft day. Tune in to Champions Round the rest of the week because we have a ton of Super Bowl coverage for you.
So
It's Super Bowl
much.
week. So much. We're going to be jam packed pretty much every single day from here until
Dan is
Sunday.
gonna be so sick of me by the end of this freaking
I
week.
am
It's two
already
full
so.
weeks of smalls. A lot at once.
It's a lot of smalls. It's a large amount of smalls. A large small, large small. All right, everyone. Well, have a good night. We'll see you back on Thursday for the next edition where we preview the Super Bowl on Every Day's
Yeah.
Draft Day.
See you
Have a good
guys.
night.